Escuchas Ecos de AED.
Votar es un acto de mayordomía, de decidir qué estamos haciendo con el bien común. La mayordomía se ejerce cuando votamos también. No lo hemos enseñado así. Bueno, hay que volver a enseñarlo.
Ecos teológicos.
Ecos teológicos.
Ecos teológicos.
Ecos de AED. Un podcast de la Asociación para la Educación Teológica Hispana.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. We are glad that you are here. For the ones that are here with us live and for those who are seeing us afterwards, welcome to the Importance of Latino Vote, gathering sponsored by Antioquia, which is a program of the Association para la Educación Teológica Hispana in partnership with Candler School of Theology. We are going to proceed with this panel. And first and foremost, I would like each and every single member of the panel to go ahead and present themselves.
Buenos dias, Ingrid Delgado. I currently work as National Director of Public Policy and Advocacy for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, but previously I worked for 12 years in public policy for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Rubén Ortiz y trabajo con los ministerios latinos del Compañerismo Bautista Cooperativo.
Buenos días, soy el Dr. Jonathan Calvillo, Assistant Professor of Latinx Communities here at Candler School of Theology at Emory University.
Y yo soy la reverenda Jessica Lugo, directora ejecutiva de la Asociación para la Educación Teológica Hispana. So this is the question that we will approach, and it reads like this. Latinos play a crucial role in shaping the future of this country through our vote. Yet often our communities are caught between partisan narratives and simplified appeals to values. From your perspective, we have the academy, the church, and the practitioner community here. How can Latino voters embrace both the responsibility and the agency of our vote in ways that go beyond political propaganda so that our choices reflect a deeper commitment to justice, dignity, and the well-being of all?
Yeah, I think this is such an important question. And I think it requires both an internal shift and then some external actions, right? So starting on that internal shift, I think it's really important that we realize that we don't have to mold ourselves to fit into a major party box. Sometimes we do these like intellectual gymnastics and acrobatics, right? To kind of just fit in one of the boxes. And we don't have to do that, right? A lot of times we will think about one issue, maybe two issues, and then absorb the rest of a party platform, right? And so it's really important that we enter this space of political advocacy and of voting by putting our values at the forefront, right? We have to be Christians before we're members of a party, right? And in that, we need to be really honest with ourselves that both major parties in the US are flawed. And every candidate is flawed, right? The reality is that we've had members of both major parties lead in the White House, lead Congress, and lead our state legislatures. And yet we still haven't had comprehensive immigration reform. We still have poverty. We still have hunger. We still have homelessness, right? The challenges of our time, both parties have been responsible for it, right? Both parties have been imperfect in addressing them. And so I think it's really important to first identify our values. Forget about the parties, forget about the boxes, forget about the platforms, right? We have to have an internal analysis of what our values are, right? We have to research the reality of those issues, right? I like to understand the other side of an argument, right? Sometimes the other side has, an interesting, valid perspective. And when we engage eventually in conversations, we need to find common ground, right, with other perspectives. I'll be honest with you, I've been doing, political advocacy work for 12 years. I stopped watching the news a long time ago. I read the news all day long, every day. I stopped watching the news, right? Because that creates an influence too, when there's a certain rhetoric, when there's a certain tone, right? When there's a certain volume. So it's really important to be educated, but to do some of that education on your own, right? Some of that research on your own. And then once we understand what our values are, what issues, right, interconnect with our values, then we need to research what our candidates and what our elected officials, how they align and how they don't align with that. And we need to be really honest, because one party may align with some of our values and not with others. And that's okay. The reality is that I believe that as a faith community, it's better when we have things in common and not with both sides of the aisle, because we can challenge then both sides of the aisle. We can enter into dialogue and educate members of both sides of the aisle. And I believe to my core that the faith community, because we are politically disenfranchised, can actually heal this really sad, right, polarized moment in which we're in. If we care about advocating for our immigrant brothers and sisters, for people experiencing poverty, for people experiencing homelessness or on the verge of homelessness, right, those issues should be nonpartisan. Those issues should, and I think do, transcend partisanship. So if we as a faith community can bring together members of both major parties, then we can actually do something about poverty and hunger and homelessness and migration, because we're values-based, because we're issues-based, because we're people-focused and not focused on trying to fit into a major party box. So some of the external actions is how do we get people to vote? And some of the conversation that we've had at the event so far is that over 80% of registered Latinos have been voting in the last 2 elections. However, only about 60% are registered to vote. So how do we increase the number of eligible Latinos who actually register to vote and then vote? And then how do we educate them to think about voting beyond the major party boxes? So 2 things that I've been directly involved with. Number 1, when I worked at the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops, we would have a candidate comparison, and we would have a list of issues that leaned, some to the political left and some to the political right, to educate Christians, voters, Catholics, again, that neither party is aligned with us 100% of the time. And also to inform voters that we need to think about more than 1 or 2 issues when we go vote. And then with an organization in Florida, I've also helped develop a legislative report about like what bills are your legislators passing? Because we might just hear about 1 or 2 things in the news, and then the other things stay in the background. We don't even think about them. So we can create these really neutral educational kind of sources to educate people about what your elected officials are doing in your name. And beyond the vote, we need to advocate. No matter how you vote, no matter who wins any election, we need to enter into communication and relationship with our elected officials in order for both parties to better align with our values.
Voy a repetir la pregunta porque lo voy a hacer en español y así todos tomamos un poco más el contexto. ¿Cómo pueden los votantes latinos asumir tanto la responsabilidad como la capacidad de decisión de nuestro voto de una manera que vaya más allá de la propaganda política, de modo que nuestras elecciones reflejen un compromiso más profundo con la justicia, la dignidad y el bienestar de todos y todas? Bueno, yo creo que tengo varios puntos acá y hablando un poco desde el punto de la Iglesia Latina. Yo creo que, tal y como lo decía anteriormente, es necesario escuchar y valorar nuestra historia personal. Cada historia personal tiene que contar. Y la Iglesia tiene que volver a ser un lugar de testimonios y no solamente de un monólogo. Durante muchos años la Iglesia Latina se ha convertido en un gran espacio del monólogo, de la predicación o de la música solamente por unos cuantos minutos. Pero no ha habido un espacio para nuevamente retomar las historias personales, los testimonios personales. Y esos testimonios personales atraviesan por cómo votamos. ¿Por qué? ¿Cómo llegamos aquí? ¿Cómo llegamos a la fe? ¿Qué significa la fe para nosotros? ¿Verdad? ¿Qué tipo de fe estamos hablando? Y cómo eso afecta en mi participación cívica. Así que al contar y al escuchar nuestras historias, se rompe la idea de que nosotros somos un bloque homogéneo y se refuerza la conciencia de que nuestro voto tiene raíces en experiencias reales. Ante un mundo que habla de fake news y de cosas que me dijeron, tal vez, quizás, por ahí hay un comentario, yo te puedo contar mi historia personal, que no tiene que ver con eso. Así que esto nos lleva a votar no solamente con el eslogan o por la propaganda, sino con mi memoria. Y mi memoria me trae a mi discernimiento comunitario, a mi gente, y me afianza tanto en mi raíz étnica como también en mi dignidad humana. Porque cada vez que hablamos de raíz étnica tenemos que hablar de dignidad humana. Y es importante. Así que tenemos un gran ejemplo en la iglesia, incluso en la iglesia primaria en los Estados Unidos. Recordemos, por ejemplo, que el modelo de los town hall meetings nacieron en las iglesias. El modelo que se hacía en Nueva Inglaterra, que hoy en día, por cierto, se está viendo cada vez más. Nació ahí en Nueva Inglaterra y era auspiciado por las iglesias locales a las cuales les interesaba el desarrollo de toda la comunidad, de todos los problemas de la comunidad. Es un concepto que la iglesia tiene que auspiciar y que tiene que rescatar en este tiempo. La democracia en Washington será tan firme como lo sea la democracia local. Lo que esté pasando en Washington va a ser tan grande o tan fuerte como también donde está la iglesia local, que ahí es donde la iglesia está enraizada y ahí es donde la iglesia sirve. Es el mayor movimiento. Cada domingo en los Estados Unidos se reúne, en un solo domingo en los Estados Unidos se reúne más gente que en todos los estadios del país todo el año. En la iglesia tiene que volver a ser el centro de la discusión de la vida nacional. No de la mentira, no de la propagación de la mentira, sino del diálogo. Entonces, volvamos al modelo de Town Hall Meeting. Si queremos de verdad una democracia que sea justa, que sea viva, tiene que comenzar en lo local. Y si la iglesia quiere ser parte de esa justicia, no puede mirar para otro lado. No puede mirar para otro lado. Esos sueños de grandes monólogos o shows de iglesia en los que hablan unos poquitos y todos los demás se sientan y escuchan, hay que cambiarlo como iglesia, porque la iglesia es la asamblea de todos los llamados hacia afuera. Así que ahí tiene que darse la formación cívica y la formación espiritual. La iglesia tiene esa responsabilidad de acompañar a la gente a distinguir entre manipulación política y participación responsable, que es muy diferente. No se trata de decirle por quién votar, sino de formar gente con conciencia crítica. Se ha traído varias veces, hemos hablado varias veces del gran trabajo de la conciencia crítica, que no puede ser de un día para otro. Pues tenemos años de oscurantismo crítico. Necesitamos trabajar en eso, reconocer qué narrativas intentan manipular, entender entonces que el voto no se limita tal vez a unos valores morales que son reducidos y que son 3, ¿verdad? Sino también atraviesa, como decía Ingrid, por el tema de la economía, por el tema de la salud, por el tema de la educación, por el tema de la dignidad humana. Y recordar, y desde el punto de vista bíblico voy a traer una palabra muy, muy de iglesia, que votar es un acto de mayordomía, hermanos. Votar es un acto de mayordomía, de decidir qué estamos haciendo con el bien común. La mayordomía se ejerce cuando votamos también. No lo hemos enseñado así. Bueno, hay que volver a enseñarlo. Hay que traerlo. En tercer lugar, hablo un poco de discernir en comunidad para el bien común. Cuando estamos en comunidad tenemos la fe cristiana como modelo para que la dignidad atraviese todo lo que nosotros hacemos. Todo lo que nosotros hacemos. Mensaje sumamente importante en este tiempo. Necesitamos cultivar ese espacio de diálogo donde, es verdad, se ora, se reflexiona, pero se discierne. Después de eso, no solamente celebramos, hemos estado celebrando mucho, tenemos buena música para celebrar, pero ¿y qué tal de la reflexión? ¿Y qué tal de los tiempos de silencio? ¿Y qué tal reconocer que no estamos en acuerdo y darle espacio al silencio del espíritu hasta que nos ponga en acuerdo? ¿Verdad? Necesitamos rescatar el modelo cuáquero por ahí. Hay reuniones cuáqueras en las que si no hay un mensaje claro del espíritu, nadie habla. Y todo el mundo al final dice, buenas tardes, nos vemos, hasta la próxima semana. Así que, ¿cómo podemos crear esos espacios que sean de discernimiento en la iglesia local y que atraviesen todo lo que tiene que ver con la dignidad humana? Bien importante el caso. Y yo creo que la iglesia sigue siendo el centro. Y sigue siendo el centro de la misión de Dios y del bienestar humano también. Y todo lo que es humano nos debería a nosotros afectar. Todo lo que es humano nos debería llamar la atención y deberíamos trabajarlo desde la iglesia local. Yo apelo por una vuelta a la iglesia local. Y ojo, trabajo con una denominación. Pero la iglesia local es el motor de vida.
Bien, gracias. Estoy de acuerdo con mis colegas. I'm on board with what my colleagues have said. En particular, quería tocar el tema de los testimonios, ¿no? Me encantó eso. I love that idea of the testimony. So I'm just going to say a brief thought on that. Along with our personal testimonies and what we can learn from our journeys and how we got here to where we're at today, thinking about the testimonies of our peoples. And I think that sometimes we struggle with having a lack of memory, both institutionally. Our institutions have lack of institutional memory. Sometimes we don't know why things are the way they are, but also our communities and our peoples, sometimes because of trauma, sometimes because of hardship, sometimes because of wanting to succeed, we begin to forget. Begin to forget. I know it's cliche where we come from, but yes, what we've been through. And I would say generationally, what we've been through, what were the struggles that our peoples have gone to, and what can we learn from that, from those journeys. Secondly, and finally, I'll say building coalitions and learning from the stories of others that have helped to open some of the pathways that we have walked through. And in particular, I think of, especially being here in Atlanta, the struggle of my Black American brothers and sisters and siblings out in the community and the histories that are here. I think we need to learn that. We think we need to learn about our indigenous communities all around. And so learning about these histories, again, having a memory, not only for our own communities, but also for some of the communities that we have some connections to, and building coalitions around those connections.
Thank you. To finish this part of our panel, I would like to invite you to give us an invitation around this topic and what should we take away when we leave this room today.
What should we take away? I think we take away that these are really challenging times. And a lot of people are suffering. But you, faith leaders who are in direct communication consistently with members of your community, have an ability, a calling, and maybe a moral responsibility to aid those people just beyond just charity, right? I think our faith communities are fantastic about giving a coat to someone who's cold, a bag of food to someone who's hungry, and maybe a rental check to someone who's about to get evicted. But I think it's incumbent upon us to go beyond that and just create a more just society in addressing the systems and the structures that allow the suffering, the homelessness, the hunger, the poverty, and the fact that millions of people are living in the shadows because of just unclear and messy immigration systems. So how we do that, I think there are lots of ways to do that, right? Whether it's voter registration drives, whether it's civics kind of education classes in our churches, whether it's know your rights campaigns in our churches, so our undocumented brothers and sisters know how to respond to this moment. But what we can't do is continue kind of the status quo and not engage at all.
Thank you.
Wow. Yo he estado pensando todo el tiempo acerca de los nuevos ministerios que la iglesia tiene que crear para este tiempo. Yo creo en eso. Me parece que estamos un poco desfasados con los tiempos. He estado pensando en el rescate, por ejemplo, del diaconado. ¿Por qué llegamos aquí? Tal vez porque nuestros diáconos ya no son diáconos, son ujieres. Convertimos los diáconos en ujieres y estamos pagando el precio. Pero si uno va al ministerio del diaconado en la Biblia, estaban atendiendo las necesidades de las viudas, los huérfanos. Entonces, haber abandonado un ministerio como ese a la iglesia, sin preparación, sin poder ejercitar totalmente, sin ordenación siquiera, y convertirles en simplemente greeters, personas que son los que dan el papelito del domingo y dicen hola y ya. Estoy hablando un poco duro, ¿verdad? En términos de iglesia, pero soy pastor, me tomo la licencia. De verdad, estoy pensando en los ministerios que necesitamos rescatar y en los nuevos que tenemos que crear. Por ejemplo, en educación, no hemos educado el discipulado para nosotros es base 1, 2, 3, 4. Después que te bautizaste, saliste a la calle y no te damos las herramientas para ejercitar en eso. O sea, ¿cómo te conviertes en un advocate siendo un miembro de iglesia? ¿Cómo creamos esos advocates naturally? From the body, from inside the body. Desde adentro hacia afuera. Como parte del discipulado, esto no lo hace allá, en Washington, esto no lo hace Ingrid allá, esto no lo hace tal persona allá, esto no es el ministerio de tal persona que tiene que crear porque hay una necesidad, esto es la iglesia local, porque cada discípulo es un discipulador, pero es un advocate también, es un defensor de los demás. Entonces hay que cambiar nuestro currículum de educación cristiana, del te convertiste, te bauticé y te sentaste a escucharme. Te convertiste, te bauticé, te empoderé y saliste al mundo a cambiarlo desde integralmente, holistically, de todo. Hay que cambiar eso. Yo estoy pensando en los nuevos ministerios de la iglesia, en los que tenemos que rescatar, sanar, sanear, repensar y humillarnos ante el Señor. Yo soy una persona de iglesia y yo creo que necesitamos, algunos de nosotros lo mejor que podemos hacer es cerrar el tinglado y abrir uno nuevo.
Doctor Lugo, ¿me pudiera repetir la pregunta original?
Sí,
Para,
la
sí.
pregunta original, claro que sí.
Y por mientras afirmo lo que acaban de compartir mis colegas, estoy 100% de acuerdo con lo que han dicho.
So it says, Latinos play a crucial role in shaping the future of this country through our vote. Yet often our communities are caught between partisan narratives and simplified appeals to values. From your perspective, how can Latino voters embrace both the responsibility and the agency of our vote in ways that go beyond political propaganda so that our choices reflect a deeper commitment to justice, dignity, and the well-being of all? And what is your invitation?
Okay, then combining both questions, and I wanted to hear that one and this one. So one of the areas that I really feel, and thank you for repeating it, for finding it. One of the areas that I really feel concern and a burden for, that I wanted to put forth with the group, is I'm thinking a lot about generational and multi-generational, intergenerational connections, and how that's playing into the future of the Latino vote. And it's interesting because I work a lot with young adults, in part because of my role here, and maybe because as a former youth minister once upon a time and pastor for some years. I was a pastor for 10 years, and many of the members of my church were young adults. So I think a lot about the intergenerational dynamics. And so connecting some of the dots here, including earlier, I spoke about the networks that we're a part of. And I think about how sometimes the generations can become these like split networks and are living in these very distant networks, not interacting. And yet, strangely enough, I find within our communities that the younger generations and the second and third generations want to be connected to the stories and the testimonials. They want to have a sense of groundedness. They want to have a sense of coming from somewhere. I'm going to share this and connect another dot, and it's all, it's part of this. My students that were here yesterday, they loved it. They absolutely loved what you all shared. They felt so privileged. And so they were, I want to share that they were thankful that they were a part of this. One of the questions that they asked, and this connects to what I said earlier about generations, they said, we wonder, a couple of them, we wonder if for people that are trying to find a voice and working to find a voice and establish themselves in a country and being faced with all these different challenges, is it common to feel like, I just want to go home? I just want to go back. Wherever back or home might be. And I said, well, for some of us, this is home. For some of us have been here multiple generations, but we know that our families weren't always here, but this is the home we know for many of us. I'm second generation. This is the home that we know. And I found out that some of my ancestors were here 200 years ago in former Arizona. This is the home for many of us, generationally. And so the new generations, they want to feel a sense of connection, but they wonder, is there another home for me? Is there another place? If we think spiritually, some of us might, well, it's heaven or the kingdom of God. But we've been called to build that, right? We've been called to build that community, that beloved community. But the sense of connectedness, people want to have a sense, younger folk, second generation, third generation, even if they're older now, want to have that sense of connectedness, of being from somewhere. These narratives like Christian nationalism and other things, they offer an alternative. This is where you're from. This is your home. And so many say, I found it. My story intersects with this story. This is where I belong. But folks are looking for a transformative story of where they're from, of their peoplehood, of where we come from, of how God has la mano de Dios. ¿Cómo ha estado la mano de Dios sobre nuestros pueblos? Y nos ha guiado desde el comienzo. So that's what I want to say. Think intergenerationally, multi-generationally. What are we passing on? I don't have all the answers. Now that I have a teenager and younger kids, I'm like, ay, Señor, how do I do this? How do I do this? But I hope that we can stay in those conversations, and the responses I don't think are going to be the traditional responses. We have to, part of it, but we have to think beyond and creatively. So I'll leave it at that.
Why don't we give a round of applause to our 3 resources and panelists? Once again, we want to say thank you, and we want to finish this panel on behalf of La Mesa Academy, Candler School of Theology, and la Asociación para la Educación Teológica Hispana. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for being here.
Ecos teológicos.
Ecos teológicos.
Ecos teológicos.
Ecos de AED. Un podcast de la Asociación para la Educación Teológica Hispana.